Hello, welcome. Complement of the season is less than 48 hours to 2024. And so good to have you join us again on the last edition of the program for the year 2023. I am Frank Omalape. Here's what coming up on Business Week. The Corporate Affairs Commission reiterates commitment to enhancing the ease of doing business in the country and promote economic development. Plus, the Central Bank of Nigeria assures depositors safety of their funds in the banks. And finally, outside Nigeria, the General Assembly approves a $3.59 billion budget for the United Nations to finance the organization's peace-building fund in 2024. Of this and many more are what to expect on the show today. Please stay with us. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Let's begin with some major stories that made headline in the course of the week. The special CBN investigator, Mr. Jim Obazi, has summoned Mr. Babatunde Lemo, chairman of Titan Trust Bank, to answer questions regarding the bank's acquisition of Union Bank of Nigeria, PLC. Mr. Lemo, a former CBN deputy governor, was directed to appear before a team of special investigators at the Department of Force Intelligence in Abuja in the week. Beyond Mr. Lemo, the investigators have also requested the presence of Mrs. Cornelius Vink and Rahul Savara, identified as promoters of Titan Trust Bank. The summons reportedly stems from allegations raised in a report by Mr. Jim Obazi, a special investigator appointed by the presidency in July 2023, stating that some persons were used as proxies by a former CBN governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, to set up Titan Trust Bank and acquire Union Bank. And away from there now, the Central Bank of Nigeria has once again assured depositors and customers safety of their funds in the banks. The APS Bank Acting Director, Corporate Communications Department, Mrs. Hakama Sidi Ali, gave the assurance in a statement in Abuja. The bank assurance was informed by a report about a recommendation for the federal government to take over some CBN-supervised financial institutions. This is allegedly linked to a report by Mr. Jim Obazi, a CBN special investigator, that former governor of the APS Bank, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, used his proxies to acquire two financial institutions. The bank said Nigerian banks remain safe and sound and advised customers to proceed with their banking transactions as usual, as there was no cause for concern. And still in the course of the week, the Corporate Affairs Commission is enhancing effort at contributing headquarters to enhancing the ease of doing business in the country. This was the fallout of a forum on its role in promoting investment and economic development. Lara Folanyo has details.
A meeting on investment promotion and economic development as it applies to the Corporate Affairs Commission, particularly as concerns its role in the birth and sustainability of businesses in the country. This is against the backdrop of aligning its operations with modern-day trends as it applies to global best practices.
The Commission plays a very significant role in the life of any enterprise. And an enterprise is usually comes to existence by what is called incorporation. So when you register a company, it becomes a legal person capable of acquiring rights and obligations.
The talks here center around the beneficial ownership register as well as key performance indicators, amongst others. The thinking is that future operations of the registry are expected to evolve with technological trends, including speed, cost, accuracy, and timeliness as determinants for evaluation.
We gave initial period of 90 days. That 90 days, like you rightly said, has elapsed. But what we have done recently is also to issue another publication to say that if for any reason you have paid your annual return and your name is still on that list, you will get back to us to forward evidence of payment of annual return so that we don't make an error for a person that has filed his annual return being delisted.
The agency highlighted its movement from manual to full automation and to now offering online operations, and urged participants towards building the future registry of their dreams.
The Corporate Affairs Commission has several measures in place to help the doing business environment in Nigeria, one of which is the introduction of the Beneficial Ownership Register. Lara Folanyo. TVC News, Abuja.
An improved maize variety will be commercially released in 2024 to boost the commodities output in the country. The nation's Biotechnology Development Authorities, who facilitated the varieties modification, said the development will enhance food security in line with President Tinubu's food security agenda. Here again is Lara Folanyo's report.
Genetically modified crops not only have greater yields, but resist pests and diseases that invade plantations. Nigeria already has the modified cowpea and cotton commercially available, and the maize variety is now to join next year. The variety known as the Teller maize was developed with the support of the country's biotechnology authorities, and it is a transgenic as well as drought-tolerant and insect-resistant species, particularly against the fall armyworm.
Have to provide solution to food insecurity in our nation. And what we are doing and what we have been doing is what we try to communicate to people, that this is what we are doing. And we are fully aligned with the government policy of food security to our nation. Most especially, we have released the previous BT, the beans that we have released, and also the one that is about to be released early next year, that is Teller maize.
Yield is strong. Of course, the farmer will adopt it without any, question or what and that. So that's what we're expecting, that it will impact upon their livelihood. Once they have yield, they are going to have profit. Once they have profit, of course, their livelihood will change. And that's what we're yearning for, just for food security and for us to produce enough. Because maize is also produced in deficit in the country. So, and that deficit is made up by importation. So Nigeria imports maize a lot. So, but with this now, the release, once it is released, of course, we're expecting that that deficit that the country usually have will be covered up.
Nigeria's agriculture challenges remain a cause for concern here, and the country is advised to adopt evolving scientific and technological tools available at this time in line with global best practices in agriculture, a development seen as critical to farmers' needs for better crop nutrition resilience as well as better yields. The media is specifically tasked on spreading the word.
This is a subject that not everybody understood. We do our things in the laboratory, and nobody understands what is going on in the laboratory. But there is a media that we can channel our information, what we do in the laboratory, and what advantages that we bring to the people, even though they cannot see it physically. So you people are very, very important in terms of bringing up this information closer to the people.
Scientists continually describe the use of biotechnology in agriculture as the modern solution for improved food access driven by higher productivity. Promoters of biotechnology for agriculture in Nigeria say local farmers who have planted modified seeds say the results have been really impressive. Lara Folanyo, TVC News, Abuja.
And outside Nigeria, now Israel's government agreed to give Intel Corp a $3.2 billion grant for new $25 billion chip plant it plans to build in southern Israel, both sides said on Tuesday in the course of the week. The news comes as Israel remains locked in a war with Palestinian militant group Hamas in the wake of the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel. Intel said in a statement that the expansion plan for its Kiryat Gat site is an important part of Intel's effort to foster a more resilient global supply chain alongside the company's ongoing and planned manufacturing investment in Europe and the United States. In addition to the grant, that amount to 12.8% of the total investment, the chip maker also committed to buy 60 billion shekels, that's about $16.6 billion worth of goods and services from Israeli suppliers over the next decade, while the new facility is expected to create several thousand jobs. And also in the course of the week, the General Assembly has approved a $3.59 billion budget for the United Nations for 2024, including the establishment of a special account to finance the organization's peace funding building fund. The Office of the President of the General Assembly in a statement said the budget was approved last week. The 193-member General Assembly also adopted nearly $50 million in additional funding for decisions taken by the Human Rights Council the UN's primary forum on human rights matters. It also decided to establish the Peace Building Account, a dedicated multi-year special account as a modality to finance the Peace Building Fund, and also approved $50 million of assessed contributions per annum to fund the account starting January 2025. Well, coming up after this break, we have more for you as we focus on our conversation for today. We'll be back in a moment. Please stay with us. Thank you, everyone. Let's get into our conversation for today. Experts have continued to react to the recent comments on the state of subsidy removal and the current fuel pump price in the country. The World Bank, in its recent presentation on Nigeria Development Update, had set the current pump price of fuel as 650 naira is not cost reflective of the subsidy removal, and that Nigerians should be paying 750 naira per litre. Well, to assess the oil and gas sector, put subsidy removal and the current state of the economy in view of the World Bank report, I'm being joined by the CEO Center for the Promotion of the Enterprises, Dr. Muda Yusuf. He joins me virtually now. Thank you, Doctor, for joining us. Compliment of the season, I must say now. So let's begin by looking at the World Bank's position on the current fuel pump price. According to the World Bank, the government may still be paying for subsidy. First, what is your position on this development? And second, is subsidy back?
We need to be careful the way we ascribe significance to some of these World Bank pronouncements. Because some of the recommendations of the World Bank don't take account of the social context and the political context of policy. There is something about democratization of economic policy. Now, if the government is taking on a policy, the government has to be sensitive to the social environment, the social context. That, for me, is what I think the government is currently doing as far as the fuel price is concerned. Now, look at where we are coming from over the last 6 months or so. We are coming from a fuel price of about 200. Now we are around 650 to 700. And we all are witnesses to the degree of the shocks that this fuel price increase has inflicted on Nigerians, whether as individuals or as corporates or as SMEs or as micro enterprises. We're all aware of the implications of the fuel price for poverty and for inflation. So having come this far and having realized the kind of impact it has had, I think it makes sense, just as the government has done, to pause for a moment and look at what other ways the government can look at the issues and ease the pain on the citizens. The government is already trying to facilitate domestic refining of petroleum products. I think that is the direction we'll be looking at, either from the government-owned refineries or from the private refineries, so that at least we can ease the pressure of the high fuel price and the pressure of foreign exchange on fuel price. That, for me, is the way to go. The World Bank doesn't reckon with the social conditions of the people in some of these considerations. So whether there is subsidy or not, yes, there might be some level of subsidy may have returned. But the wisdom that the government has adopted in the management of the process is to say that the pains on the people is enormous already. The shocks are very high. Also came up with some other recommendations that we should further tighten monetary policy. Now, monetary policy is already very tight. MPR is around 18.75% or so. Cash reserve requirement or cash reserve ratio is already at 32.5%, which is one of the highest in the world. Interest rate anywhere is now between 25 to 30%, in some cases even much higher. So how much more do you want to tighten monetary policy? Again, we need to situate this within the prevailing economic conditions. Because you begin to tighten interest rate. That means, tighten monetary policy. That interest rate will go as high as 40%. So how do you want investors to survive that? How do you want them to be able to create jobs? At a time when we are saying that, okay, we want investors to create jobs, we are talking of unemployment and so on and so forth. So we need to be very, very cautious and to define the limits of adoption of all these World Bank recommendations.
Well, I know you just mentioned in your opening that some level of subsidy may have returned, but what is the implication of returning the economy to subsidy regime, given where the country is coming from? It's a long way up here. So the impact of the removal has been across various sectors of the economy.
Well, just as you said, it's just a partial return, not a complete return. And the level of return now is for the government to, absorb some of the cost so that we don't impose additional cost or additional, burden on the citizens. So from the social point of view, and to some extent from the political point of view, that is the way to go. Because you manage economic for people. You need to give policies a human face. And that is what the government is doing, as far as I can understand. Yes, there may be some loss of revenue and all of that. But if you save more revenue, you are saving it for who? Because at the end of the day, economic management is about people's welfare. So for me, I don't see any major serious adverse implication. It may have some partial implication for revenue. That's okay. The revenue that should have come to the federation account, some of them are now being used to subsidize. And so what? All over the world, government subsidizes to ease the pains of the vulnerable segments of society. All over the world, especially in the advanced economy, there are heavy subsidies on public transportation. There are subsidies on education. There's very heavy subsidy on agriculture. All of these things are done to ease the pressure on the vulnerable segments of society. So it's not anything unusual. What is important is that we should not allow a subsidy that will be prone to corruption, a subsidy regime that will be prone to abuse, as we have had before the removal of subsidy, and a subsidy regime that will be weighing heavily on our fiscal position. That is what is important, and I'm sure the government is conscious of all of that.
Do you think Nigerians can pay more should the government decide to act on the World Bank's position? Secondly, how much, in your view, is realistic in a fully deregulated sector?
You see, Nigerians have been pushed almost to the limit as far as the current hardships are concerned. And any government that is responsive and sensitive to prevailing situation will not even contemplate increasing the fuel price for now. So for me, I don't think it's an option that the government should be looking at. As to what the correct market price should be, in fact, that should not be a conversation. Because the whole idea cannot fly in the face of current social realities. We should not be talking about that. We should be talking about how to ease the pains, how to bring down the price of this fuel price. And I've told you one of the things to do is to see how we can quickly, facilitate or accelerate the process of domestic refining of petroleum products. That, for me, is a priority. We should not be discussing about there's a limit to which you can begin to adopt this market forces, this philosophy of market forces. There's a limit. Because we have to situate everything within your own peculiarities, within your own social context, within your own political context. As much as possible, you should democratize economic policy. That is being sensitive to what is happening within your own environment. That is the whole essence of democratizing policies. So for me, that is the way to go.
Doctor, you talked about tightening of monetary policy and its implications in your analysis earlier. It does appear the APS Bank is not willing to convey any more MPC meetings soon, given its meeting with the business community in the last quarter of the year. So what are your expectations with regards to CBN MPC meeting? Again, if you look at the policy stance on interest rate in 2022 to 2023. So talk to us about your outlook in 2024.
Now, first, the CBN governor has said that the minimum number of statutory meetings for MPC had been met. I think under the previous CBN leadership. So statutorily, there is no major infraction. Secondly, the entire team of the leadership of the CBN, the entire team is new. The governor is new, all the deputy governors are new. So they also need time to be able to really understand and come to grips with the reality that is on ground. So we can excuse that. I imagine that latest within the first quarter of 2024, they will have MPC meeting. But having said that, we need to realize the limitations of monetary policy as a tool of fighting inflation, especially in all these developing countries, Nigeria inclusive. Because we need to look at the key drivers of inflation. The key drivers of inflation are largely structural. We are talking about cost of energy, we are talking about cost of logistics, we are talking about exchange rate, and exchange rate is a function of your capacity to export. And you are looking at a whole lot of other factors, cost of diesel. All these things are the issue of security, for instance. Impact of insecurity on food production. Food inflation is one of the biggest components of inflation. These are not things that are within the purview of the CBN. So if you continue to tighten monetary policy, it just makes life more difficult for those who are investors in the economy, who are trying to, borrow money from the banks, or who are even already indebted to the banks. They are going to put more pressure on them. And that will affect investment, it will affect growth, it will affect job creation. So these things they are interconnected. And we need to be careful the way we push for some of this market-led or this classical approach, to economic management. Some of the policies are good, but we should be able to distill those policies and know what works for us and what doesn't work for us. And the good thing about what the current CBN governor has said is that they are going to limit the rate at which the government resorts to the waste and means finances. Because from a monetary point of view, that is one of the biggest channels of monetary driven inflation. That is the waste and means, the rate at which the CBN is making money available to the government, which is practically like just printing money. The new CBN leadership is very conscious of that, and they have told the world that they are going to ensure that they adhere strictly to the statutory provisions as far as waste and means financing is concerned. So we need to be careful the extent to which we push some of these monetary policy instruments.
I'm going to let you go, Dr. Bob, but I need us to look at this before I let you go. If you look at 2023, it's a year described by many experts as a very turbulent year. So what's your outlook on the economy with regards to what needs to be prioritized to scale up the growth in the new year? So let's wrap up on that note.
Well, in terms of what we need to prioritize, we need to prioritize, easing the cost of living. Because the cost of living situation is one of the biggest challenges facing many parts of the world, Nigeria inclusive. So we need to come with a mix of policies, monetary, investment policy, tariff policy, import duty, deploy all of these things to see how we can bring down the cost of living, the cost of operations, the cost of doing business. That for me is a priority. Then, of course, we need to, accelerate the process of import substitution, especially around importation of energy products and some other raw materials too. so that that could ease the pressure on foreign exchange and help us to stabilize the foreign exchange. Because the foreign exchange situation has a major impact on practically all sectors of the economy. So if we're able to make progress with, increasing the oil output through, ensuring better environment for oil production, especially around security and tackling all this oil theft, if we make a lot more progress in the area of import substitution, especially through the importation of petroleum products, that will help us to stabilize the macroeconomic environment. The revenue outlook is already looking fairly good because of the reforms, but the government needs to act fast on easing the social outcomes of the reforms. I think those, for me, should be the priorities. And that for me is the outlook for 2024.
I think we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. As CEO, CPP, Dr. Muda Yusuf, thank you for your time. Compliment of the season and have a prosperous 2024.
Thank you very much, Frank. Thanks.
It's all right. So let's wrap it up now. But just before we wrap it up, let's tell you that capital inflow into the telecom sector over the last 4 years hit $2.51 billion, with that of last year being the lowest. According to statistics from the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, and the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, foreign direct investment into the telecoms industry in 2020 was approximately $417 billion against $942 billion recorded in 2019. According to document by the Policy, Competition and Economic Analysis Department of the NCC, this translates to a decline of 55.7% in capital importation year-on-year. Now, the decline in capital imports is largely attributed by the operators to the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic that distorted global businesses and impacted businesses negatively. Well, and that's our show for this week and, of course, this year. Thank you for staying with us all through 2023. Well, have a prosperous 2024. I am Frank Omale. I'll see you again.